I was just 15 years old when I had my first son, Aaron. As you can imagine, my entire world changed. I could no longer do the sports I loved. My friends drifted away, and being a teen mom wasn't accepted well by the community. At this time, I had also moved out of my parents' home and into an apartment with my son's father. I continued to go to high school and worked part-time. I even finished my freshman finals 2 days after giving birth to my son. Unfortunately, this transition was made more difficult by the fact that my son's father was physically, verbally, and emotionally abusive. In fact, the first time he hit me, I was 6 months pregnant. I had no idea then what it would turn into. As time went on, our fights escalated. He was arrested on a handful of occasions. It's important to note that my family tried so hard to help me, but in order for them to do so, I would have to leave him. I was terrified of that idea. If I left him, I'd be a single mom. If I left him, I'd be the stereotype that everyone predicted. And after all we had been through, all the fights, the tears, the bruises and black eyes, I still loved him. One fight changed quite a bit for me. I don't remember what it was or how it began, but he hit me and I hit him back. I actually defended myself. He called the police on me and begged me not to tell them that he had hit me. The officer that arrested me was so kind. "Shawna, all you have to do is tell me he hit you." It sounds easy enough, but I just couldn't do it. By this time, I was a junior in high school. Now I had a domestic violence charge, and I was on probation. I was eligible for the Daniels Fund scholarship, which would have been a full-ride scholarship. I already had my essay written, and I was just waiting to hear back. One day in class, I was asked to go to the library to speak to somebody about the scholarship. This was it. I was so excited. This was the ticket my son and I needed. I walked into the library. "Shawna, have a seat." She didn't look happy. "We appreciate the work you put into your essay, but we understand you're on probation, and a recipient of our scholarship cannot be on probation." I was stunned. "You don't understand. It's not a typical situation. My probation officer will write a letter on my behalf." "We apologize, Shawna. We can't have a recipient on probation." I felt hopeless. I felt like I had failed my son, and honestly, I thought this was the end of the road for my education. I needed to leave my son's father, and to do so, I had to work full-time. So that's what I did. I dropped out of high school, and I got my GED. Emotionally, I was a wreck. I cried all the time. I had nightmares every night. I was filled with worry and nervousness. My anxiety was starting to take over. But then I didn't even have a word for it. And then I met a guy. I made sure to look for all the red flags. He didn't seem angry, and he didn't hit me when we argued. But I did not notice that he drank a lot. We dated for a while. My son loved him. We decided to move in together. It was about a year into our relationship when I found out that I was pregnant. We were shocked. But by this time, his drinking had taken over, and he began getting violent. He was arrested for domestic violence a few months into my pregnancy. He spent most of my pregnancy in work release and was released a couple months before our daughter was born. He promised me the world. He said he knew his drinking was the problem and he'd be able to control it. My daughter Ayana was born June 17th, 2008. He was sober for her birth, but that didn't last long. The next 8 months were horrible. I remember one night he called and said he was coming home. He hadn't been home in a few days. He was out on a drinking binge. This was quite normal. I remember I was so hurt. I was so angry, and I could not understand how he couldn't stop drinking. I knew a fight was coming. We had alcohol in the house, and so I decided to have a few drinks. I remember the taste was awful, but more memorable was the fact that I was numb, and when he came home, I wasn't even angry. This was the first time I used alcohol to deal with my life. I had never really drank before. Truthfully, I had no interest in it. But little did I know, this was just the beginning. We split up not long after. My son was so hurt to see him go. I felt like I had let my children down. My nightmares were back. I was in a constant state of worry. By this time, I was drinking on a daily basis. See, when I drank, I could wipe the tears away and I could go to work. I continued in this pattern for a few years, and when I wasn't drinking, my body would shake and I would ache. This is about the time I started bringing a water bottle to work with me so I could drink while I was there. It alleviated my symptoms. I remember thinking, maybe I'm drinking too much. Maybe that's why I ache. Maybe that's why I'm shaking. That realization was horrifying. There was no way that I could be an alcoholic. In that same moment, I would fill with guilt and this crippling sense of shame. My mom tried very hard to help me find a way to beat this, but I couldn't afford health insurance through work, and I didn't qualify for Medicaid. So I used the only thing I knew. I drank. This had been going on for about 5 years when I met the man that would stand by me through my recovery. In the summer of 2013, I found out I was expecting my third child. When I found out I stopped drinking, I remember praying to God to help me get through this pregnancy. I was terrified, and I was full of fear, anxiety. I went through withdrawals. I had seizures. I had hallucinations. I had the shakes, the sweats. And then when the physical symptoms were off, I had horrible cravings and nightmares. I ended up relapsing when I was pregnant. I know what a tough subject this is, but I think it's important that I am honest with you about what addiction really is. What I want you to understand is I didn't get here overnight, and these issues, they don't discriminate. I spent a few days in detox, and my family supported me in remaining sober through the rest of my pregnancy. My son Gunnar was born January 5th, 2014. And then I started experiencing postpartum depression. I was back to having nightmares, and I wasn't happy. I needed to feel normal again. Gunnar was about 2 months old when I relapsed. That March, I was driving home from work. I had my children in the car, and we were in an accident. I had been drinking. I wasn't wearing my seatbelt, and I hit the windshield hard enough to cause a brain bleed. See, I was supposed to go to jail, but I was hospitalized instead. I cannot tell you how relieved I was that my children were not hurt. When I was released from the hospital, Child Protective Services got involved. On my birthday, April 1st, my children were removed from my care and placed with family. With everything I had been through, it was always my children and me. I struggled to find the words to tell you how empty I felt inside. I was nothing without my children. And then the realization hit. The horrible accident I had put us in, and how differently it could have ended up. I never, ever wanted to hurt my children. I needed help. All the pain from before, the anxiety, the nightmares, the worry, these things that had crippled me in the past, they were nothing compared to the pain of losing my children. At the court hearing, there was a representative from North Range Behavioral Health. She offered me something called Family Treatment Court. It was a year-long, intensive outpatient program that integrated North Range Behavioral Health, Child Protective Services, and the judicial system. I had no idea what treatment would be like, but I knew I needed help, and I needed my children back. Over the next few months, I went to treatment every day of the week, and I went to court every Wednesday to help keep me accountable. I was given homework designed to help me find the roots of my addiction. I wasn't just able to address my drinking, but the fear and the anxiety that I had been experiencing since I was 15 years old. I spent time with my children every day, and I could do so as long as there was a family member present. Treatment was not easy. I had to fight hard and dig deep within myself. I had to be brutally honest with my treatment team and myself. I still say the hardest part was actually having to look in the mirror and take responsibility for where I had ended up. I could no longer use my experiences as an excuse to fail. I had to use them as motivation to get better. The best part was my children were also able to get services. They did therapy, and they were able to learn about what I had been experiencing at a level that could make sense to them. 3 months into treatment, my children were able to come home with me. I continued to work on myself and build healthy relationships. Things I once took for granted, I cherished, like watching the same movie for the 8th night in a row, or helping with math homework, even though I don't understand how it's taught anymore. I went back to college, and I graduated treatment in March of 2015. See, my experience opened the door that allowed me to find my true passion, helping others just like myself. And in doing so, I get a constant reminder that I have the tools already to deal with my anxiety and my fear. And then I have no desire to drink. Today, I'm a psychology major at the University of Northern Colorado. I work for North Range Behavioral Health as a certified peer specialist. As a peer, I get to utilize my experience in a way that promotes hope and resiliency. I work with an incredible team of individuals with extraordinary stories of their own. Together, we provide support and compassion to those in our community who are struggling. See, because of our transparency, we can help our clients let go of the guilt and the shame that often stops them from asking for help. These issues impact everyone, whether you've experienced it yourself or know someone who has. There may even be someone here tonight that's fighting a battle you cannot see. If I could leave you with one message, I hope I've made it clear. Recovery is possible with the support and the grace of the community. Thank you.